Justice Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi launched the 30th anniversary of South Africa's constitution in Johannesburg today. Former President Nelson Mandela signed the constitution into law in 1996. The launch also marks the start of Human Rights Month. Joining us now for a discussion on this is Matshidiso Lencoasa from Section 27. A very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for joining us. It's been hailed as one of the most progressive constitutions in the world, but has it lived up to that reputation?
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for the invitation. So, yes, it is true that South Africa's constitution is often held with high regard globally, but there is a disconnect, and I think that many people are recognizing this disconnect between the lived experiences of people and what the Constitution promises. So we have a state that we can hold accountable to the Constitution, particularly around the rights, for example, right to basic education, right to accessing quality healthcare services. But we do then see when we do try to hold the state accountable for various things, they say we would love to implement this thing that we have promised in the Constitution, but unfortunately we do not have the resources to achieve that. And so I think that this is a really important moment as we mark Human Rights Month, but also as we mark 30 years to really think about what can we do with this tool, this so-called progressive tool that we can actually advance and really build a nation that works for all.
But I mean, we're not a poor country by any stretch of imagination, but you and I have this conversation in a country where you now finding increasingly like high numbers of people not having access to something as basic as water.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly unacceptable, and you are right that we do have resources, we are resource rich, and some of the issues or the shortcomings regarding the implementation of the Constitution really are a slap in the face, because you think, well, what's wrong? Perhaps there's an issue regarding political will. For example, I think when I think about it, for example, last year, there was a conversation around the country around rising malnutrition across various provinces. So in the Eastern Cape, the South African Human Rights Commission even subpoenaed the Premier around this, but also in Gauteng, which is also the economic hub of this continent. When you see a country like ours, which is food secure, and we're a net exporter of food, but we're not able to deliver the constitutionally protected rights to nutrition for all people in this country, there is something that is really wrong. I think that this is now a real opportunity to hold the states accountable to honestly and genuinely do everything in its power to progressively realize and where it can immediately realize when it's applicable, immediately realize the rights, the promises that are guaranteed in this Constitution. And I think especially in an election year as such, there will be a lot of rhetoric, a lot of promises around the Constitution, but now's the opportunity to really push the state so that we can position the state to actually deliver on its constitutional obligation.
But what have we not done, or what are we not doing as a people to make sure that especially those who have taken it upon themselves to deliver on the promise of the Constitution, what are we not doing to ensure that we hold these people accountable so they can deliver on the Constitution's promise?
Yeah, so from a budget analysis now, having come out of this budget speech that was spoken about, I think it is good to reflect on some of those shortcomings. So on the one hand, we'll have these political promises that we had, for instance, in the SONA. It was a very long SONA, and again, in the statement of province addresses across the country, there are huge promises. But then 2 weeks later, a budget is tabled and it doesn't actually fund those commitments. So, for example, we have a SONA that was talking all about infrastructure, delivering infrastructure, social infrastructure, in our communities across the country. Clinics are crumbling, learners are being crammed into spaces, like schools are falling apart. But then 2 weeks later, we had a budget that actually did not, in real terms, actually decreased the allocation towards conditional grants to actually fixing clinics, building new schools, addressing these crises. So we have this legislation that is progressive and that has these commitments to the state, but then our fiscal and our economic policies do not align with that. And so there is that disconnect until we position our economy to actively address these constitutional obligations. We'll just continue to have promises, but really the sites of struggle continuing to be unemployment, poverty, inequality, which really happens at the heart of our economy. So I think that, it's quite disheartening 30 years on. I think there was a lot of momentum at the beginning. I mean, I was just a child when that happened. I must have just been born when that happened. But there was a euphoria and a sense of belief in this country and doing something better. And I really don't want us as a country to give up on the state, because I think that because of the disconnect and the feeling that we have these promises of the Constitution, but it's not realizable and we can't hold the state accountable. But I think that there is a lot of opportunity, because it's an election year, because all eyes are on the state, and because of the politics around it, that this might be an opportunity to rethink how do we hold the state accountable to actually realize its constitutional obligations beyond the rhetoric, but actually what's in the numbers? What does the budget say? How are they going to fund these commitments that they have made to the people of our country?
Do we have enough safeguards? I mean, we have a whole range of Chapter 9 institutions, for example, that are meant to ensure that, in fact, our Constitution is indeed a lived reality. But do we have enough safeguards to hold these people, or do we need to improve somewhere?
So I definitely think we can do better in terms of safeguards in the realization of rights, especially for marginalized communities. So we have, as you mentioned, we have these Chapter 9 institutions, for instance, the Commission of Gender Equality, South African Human Rights Commission. But when it's time for implementation, they're plagued by under-resourcing, but also, allegations around how the little money that is going to these Chapter 9 institutions, is it actually translating into, these institutions that are robust enough to protect and defend the rights of ordinary people across this country? I think that is something that we definitely do need to address, and we need to hold, we need to be better in that regard. I also do think that as a people, we need to be taking on the hard-won victories, including the Constitution, which was a hard-won victory. People lost their lives in fighting for our freedom, in our participation, our public participation. Is that when it comes to issues, for example, with the budget, it's not, I think that we can do better than just watching the budget, finding out has alcohol gone up or has the price of cigarettes gone up, but actually realizing and taking ownership and saying that this is our money as taxpayers. We are all contributing to this public money. How is this not translating into building a clinic in our community? Why is what's the disconnect? And I think that in this moment now, because we're in an era of accountability, people are watching Parliament more so than we've ever seen before. There's young, fresh energy in Parliament and ongoing debates. I continue to encourage people in this country to continue to do so and take advantage of the public participation that we have, so that we can all together just really build a country that works for all.
Matshidiso Lencoasa, thank you very much for your time and insights. Really appreciate it.